Portugal doesn't look like a crisis, it looks like sunlight, stone streets, ocean air. A country people describe as easy, and that's what makes the housing crisis here feel even colder, because the outside says calm, and the inside says panic. In Portugal, housing pressure doesn't always arrive as a dramatic moment. It arrives as a slow erasure, a little more rent, a little less space, a little less choice. Until you realize you are not living a life anymore, you are managing a shortage. It begins with a simple thought. I just need a place. Not a dream apartment, not a perfect neighborhood, a door, a key, a stable address. Then you start searching, and you learn something fast. The search is not about taste. It's about speed. You open listings, you refresh again, a place appears, you message immediately, and it's gone. Not because it was beautiful, because the market is hungry, and hungry markets do not wait. That is the first unfairness. Need is not a qualification. Urgency is. Then comes the next scene, the viewing. A viewing isn't a viewing anymore, it's a pressure test. People outside a building with their phones in hand. People on staircases. People drifting through hallways like they're trying not to look desperate. Everyone dressed like they're going to an interview, because they are. And you feel it in your body. You're not touring a home, you're auditioning for shelter. You watch renters perform, smiling too much, offering too quickly, trying to look safe, because the market doesn't reward honesty, it rewards certainty, and certainty is expensive. So you start hearing sentences that should never exist in normal life. I can pay up front, I can move tomorrow, I won't complain. That last one is the darkest, because it means people understand the real rule. When housing is scarce, silence becomes survival. Now the crisis becomes physical, not in ruins, in corners, in spaces that feel like they were not built for life, but for storage. A loft bed isn't clever design anymore, it's a forced compromise. A wall desk isn't a minimalist lifestyle, it's the last remaining surface where your life can function. Storage walls aren't aesthetic. They're proof your home cannot hold your life, so your life must fold. And people don't choose this because they love it. They choose it because the alternative isn't bigger. The alternative is nothing. That is why the crisis is so emotionally heavy. It punishes people for wanting something ordinary. And as pressure rises, the city starts sorting people without saying a word. Those who can pay more stay closer. Those who can't move outward, then outward again. Then the commute becomes part of the rent. Hours of travel, early mornings, late nights. Not because you love the journey, because you were pushed. And it creates a quiet kind of exhaustion, the kind nobody applauds. You work more to live less. Now comes the unfair comparison that makes people angry. Portugal is a place the world wants. People dream about living here, visiting here, owning here, spending time here, and that desire has a price. Because when a place becomes globally desirable but local incomes stay local, local wages become the weakest force in the room. The wage loses. The renter loses. The worker loses. And the city becomes something strange. A place that can use your labor without making space for your life. That is how a crisis hides in plain sight. The cafes still open. The streets still look beautiful. The skyline still looks calm. But behind that calm is a constant negotiation. How long can I stay? What happens when the lease ends? What happens if the rent rises again? And that fear spreads into everything. You don't plan in years, you plan in renewal dates. You don't buy furniture, you don't decorate, you don't settle. You live like a guest in your own life. Now, why does it keep happening? Not slogans, not politics, just repeating forces. First, demand piles up where opportunity concentrates. Jobs, universities, hospitals, transport. People need to be close to the same places. And when everyone needs the same streets, housing becomes a bottleneck. Second, scarcity turns speed into power. The fastest responder wins. The slowest disappears. Need does not win. Timing wins. Third, when homes are scarce, homes become financial objects. Assets, stores of value, machines that generate rent, and assets don't care if you're tired. Assets don't care if your paycheck is normal. Assets care about bids. Fourth, pressure spreads outward. When the center becomes impossible, people spill into surrounding towns. Then those towns harden too. Then even the fallback options begin to vanish. So the crisis stops being a city story. It becomes a national feeling. Now, people ask the question that always arrives in every housing crisis. What is the government doing? And here is the part that makes the frustration sharper. It is not like nothing exists. Portugal introduced a major housing package with multiple measures aimed at reducing pressure. There were rules designed to limit extreme rent shocks on new leases for homes that had been rented before, tying how far the starting rent could jump to what the previous tenant was paying, with exceptions and conditions. There were also mechanisms intended to push long vacant homes back toward use, giving authorities tools to intervene when a property sits empty for a long time while demand is exploding. And there were policies aimed at access and entry barriers for some groups, trying to soften the feeling that housing is only for the already established. On paper, that sounds like action. But renters do not live on paper. They live in the gap between policy and reality. Because a rule does not remove the crowd at the viewing. A package does not stop a listing from disappearing in hours. A target does not change what your paycheck can carry this month. And there is another layer that makes people feel even more powerless. The rules do not always stay still. Some of these measures have been revised or rolled back as the approach changes over time. So renters are left with a strange, exhausting experience. Rules exist, then rules change, and your rent does not wait for the system to settle. That gap becomes its own kind of cruelty, because it creates a feeling that is hard to explain. It is not that nobody is talking, it is that the talking does not become a key in your hand. So you watch the system move slowly, while your housing situation moves fast. Your rent rises, your room shrinks, your commute grows, and you adapt. Not because you are okay with it, because you have no leverage. You accept less privacy, less stability, less comfort. You keep quiet, you settle, you endure. And the repetition is what breaks people. Not one dramatic eviction, not one big headline. The same small humiliation over and over until it becomes normal. Refresh. Apply, wait, refresh, apply, wait, gone, again. Now zoom out. Portugal is not alone. Across Europe, the same pattern appears in places with concentrated demand, cities that attract opportunity, money, and movement. Different languages, different laws, same emotion. Ordinary people priced out of ordinary shelter. If a normal paycheck can't secure a normal home, what happens to a society when home stops being a place and becomes a competition you keep losing? Subscribe to follow this series, country by country, because this is not one city, it's a pattern.